All right, good morning to all our webinars attendees. Right now we have about 60 over people who are joining us today for this webinar from all different enterprise, educational institute, or even future colleagues. A very warm welcome to this 8th joint jobs and skills insight webinar covering the topic Transformational Talent Portrait of the High Potential Workforce. I am Matthew from the Skills Development Division of Skills Future Singapore, and together with me is Gibson and Manyong from the Skills Development Division as well. Also with us today is Mark Reilly from Indeed. He's the presenter of today's topic. Mark leads the Global Evangelist programs at Indeed and drive innovation in the recruitment industry through the creation and sharing of personal insights, research, and best practice. So before we go into the webinar proper, here are some pointers and advice for our webinar attendees. So this webinar segment will take about 15 minutes. During the webinar, our attendees will be mute by default to avoid electronic feedbacks. And interference as well. So however, you can pose your question anytime during the Q&A option on your screen. If there are any questions that are interested, you can upvote those questions and we'll do our best to address them. Any unanswered question during the session, please be assured that we will address them after the session. During this webinar itself, Mark will be speaking about 35 to 40 minutes to cover his presentation, and then after we will launch the Q&A session for the remaining duration. So sorry, you're just double checking something. All right. Okay, is it better now? Okay, so during this webinar session, it will be recorded and published in my Skills Future portal, in Skills Future's LinkedIn and YouTube page, alongside with the slides that will be sent to you. And you can be just involved in participating in the webinar. So now we'll first present about Skills Future Singapore. Our mission is to cultivate a nation of lifelong learners and a society that values skills masteries. Our mission is to enable every individual to learn for life, pursue skills masteries, and develop fulfilling careers for a future-ready Singapore. So at SSG, we believe that no matter where you are in your life, schooling years, early careers, mid-careers, or silver years, you will find a variety of resources that will help you maintain mastery of skills. Skills mastery is more than just having the right paper qualification and being good at what you do currently. More importantly is a mindset of continuous striving towards greater excellence through knowledge and application and experience. We at SSG are dedicated to help you make informed choices and decisions as you build and expand your skill sets for professional and career development. Through our skills initiative, we strive to provide useful insights so that you can create a better future with skills masteries and lifelong learning. So on today's topic, on transformation talent professionals know that the years of exceptional hires with impressive resumes and career path or charisma that seems to guarantee high performance as the workforce contain a finite pool of these invaluable employees. What methods beyond standard recruitment assessment that you as HR professional can use to identify more talents or even candidates with high potential to transform your organization. What are these traits and behaviors of exceptional employees that inspire teams or rejuvenate businesses? What are the practical insights that you can use to craft inbound recruitment strategies that attract transformation talent? Now, I will hand over to Mark, who will begin over to his sharing. Over to you, Mark. Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining today's webinar. As Matthew mentioned, my name is Mark Reilly, and I am the Director of Employer Insights for our Evangelist programs here at Indeed. And I have been based here in our Singapore office for the last 2.5 years now. Great to have you with us today. So we're going to be talking about transformational talent. Now, when we think about every field of human endeavor that people compete or participate in, there are people who stand out and tend to accomplish extraordinary things. A lot of us play chess and probably play chess regularly, but many people would still consider Bobby Fischer to be one of the greatest chess players of all time. A lot of us have dabbled in creative writing at some point in our lives. Yet people like J.K. Rowling, who began writing the Harry Potter series of books while she was on welfare and went on to become one of the world's best-selling authors, is someone who stands out within this field. And then even as we turn our attention to the field of athletics, there are a lot of us here in Singapore who enjoy getting out and running as part of our lifestyle. But then we have people like Dennis Kimetto, who is a Kenyan who won the Chicago Marathon in 2013 and later went on to set the fastest marathon ever at the time. 4 years before achieving that, he was a farmer back in Kenya, tending his cows. And he was motivated to take up running just through a chance encounter with an elite runner. When we think about these extraordinary performances, whether it's something intellectual like chess, whether it's something physical like running a marathon, whether it's something creative, or anything else that we participate in, it's hard for us not to ask the question, what is it that sets these people apart? What has made them more successful than anybody else at what they do? Is it just pure luck? Is it the timing? Is it something that they're born with? Is it the effort that they're putting in or their perseverance? These are all questions that have quite a potential impact for us as employers and recruiters in terms of thinking about our own staff and how we might choose to look at recruiting and developing employees. Now, and indeed, we like to put a lot of time and effort and research into understanding these things. And one of the things that we did was we went back and looked at Dennis Kimetto's performance in the Chicago Marathon. And one of the reasons for this is that sports are known for tracking a lot of data. There's a lot of information that we can look at and research and use as a basis. And one of the first things we noticed was that even though there were a lot of people finishing the marathon, the distribution of performance is really, really wide. We have a really nice curve here with Dennis over on the far left, all the way through to those completing it in 8 hours, which is when they would typically stop tracking marathon finishes. The second thing we noticed is that even amongst those who are performing well, the ones that are performing the best, completing the marathon the fastest, are shockingly faster than everyone else. Now, if we actually look at the results for the top 50% of performers, we see that 50% of the runners finished in 6 minutes 19 per kilometer. We see the top 40%, small improvement there. They finished in 6:01. Another small improvement there up to the top 30%, down to 539. And again, as we go up each 10%, we're seeing a small increments of improvements in terms of performance. The natural assumption for a lot of people would be, as we reach the top 5%, the top 1%, we would continue to see a similar level of performance gain, or more likely a degradation in performance improvement in terms of what is physically capable. However, we noticed that as you got up to the top 1%, there was a huge jump over that top 10% of 24%. And as we got up to the fastest times again, the absolute best to the best, there was another significant jump of 23% over the top 1% of performers. Now, this suggests that those outstanding performers are far superior than the average marathon runner, and even those that are pretty good. Most of us, though, are probably not recruiting marathon runners. However, we do see a similar level of, a similar pattern of achievement across a lot of different fields. If we think about it from something a lot of us have probably had some exposure to or some experience recruiting or working with, we can look at software developers. Software developers is an interesting one because it does allow us to empirically measure how good somebody is at their job through platforms like HackerRank. For those that have never used the platform, HackerRank is coding exercises that allow a score to be assigned to somebody's software development capabilities. Now, the average score for the top 1% of participants was 2,955. And you can see that was a 38% improvement over the top 10%. Even more impressive was the same scenario. As we got up to the very top scores, a 47% improvement over the top 1%. So we're seeing that same correlation again within this performance here. But it's important to think about, well, how does this then impact or apply to a workplace? Most of us will have heard of Steve Jobs or used some device from Apple within our lives. One of Steve Jobs' quotes was that he noticed the dynamic range between what an average person could accomplish and what the best person could accomplish was 50 or 100 to 1. And given that, we're well advised to go after the cream of the cream, and that a small team of A+ players could run circles around a giant team of B and C players. Now, it's easy to say that. It's harder to actually put it into practice. But that's what he did. When he was at the helm of Apple and Apple was developing OS X, Microsoft at the same time was developing Windows Vista. Microsoft did their development with a team of 10,000 engineers, and it took them 5 years to complete their development efforts. Apple did it with 600 engineers, and they did it in less than 2 years. Now, these are not going to be identical platforms, obviously, but it certainly allows a fairly good comparison of getting an operating system out there into the market. So this then leads us into the idea that, we do seem to be able to identify the fact that in different fields, these top performers or these outstanding performers exist. And these are people that we typically refer to as transformational talent. And it leads us to a couple of questions, which is what we're going to cover through today. The first is, what is the impact that this transformational talent can have on our own workplaces, no matter what field we're focused on or working in? The second is to think about, what do these people have in common? If we can accommodate that transformational talent does exist and it can have a positive effect on our organization, how do we identify transformational people? And then lastly, how do we build and recruit teams and businesses and organizations that are overflowing with more than our fair share of this top transformational talent? So we're going to go through each of these one by one. So what is the impact that it can have in our workplace? So it's a really interesting question. And we actually went and looked at a lot of pieces of information around this in terms of what businesses say the impact of top performers are. And three, very prominent businesses gave us three very different answers. So Bain & Co., which is a large, reputable global consulting firm, they've come out and said their top performers drive around 4 times the performance or 4 times the impact of their average employee. According to research from GE, GE is a company that makes everything from light bulbs to jet engines. They find that high performers are 10 times more productive than average performers. And then Apple, who we have touched on already, believes that their high performers were 25 times more productive than the average performers. Now, this is a pretty significant range, even just from 3 different companies, to give us a 4 through 25 times variation. Now, a key part of this and why this is different is when companies are releasing this information, we don't necessarily know what went into their research. We don't know how did they define a top performer as part of that equation. So we looked into something more referenceable and dove into the academic research. In this case, we're referencing here an article from Personal Psychology in 2012 on the normality of individual performance. And what that research showed was that it did have a small percentage of the workforce could have an outsized impact on your business output. Now, when they looked at the bottom 10% of talent within an organization, they came up with the conclusion that they were roughly producing 0% of the output of your business. The next 85% of your talent, this is the workhorse of your organization. They're responsible for producing about 75% of the output of the business. As we go up, we start to see this exponential increase again, with the top 4% producing 16% of the output, or being about 5 times as productive as the average worker. And then as we reach our peak here with the top 1% of employees, they're around 10 times more than the average worker. One of the things I really like about this research is it looked at a range of different roles in a range of different industries. So this is not related to just software developers or just retail workers. It was a study that covered multiple scenarios and is relevant to most businesses in the workforce. The second question that then leads into, so we know that we can have people in our organization who can have this exponential impact on our ability to produce as an organization. So how do we identify them? What do they have in common? What traits do they share? If I'm recruiting or developing talent within my business, how do I help identify these people? As I said, indeed, we really love to put time and effort into researching these questions. And we did that research here in Singapore, asking 500 managers to think about the most impressive top performer that they've worked with. Whether that's at your current company or a previous company, what was the number one attribute that this person exemplified? Now, as a good little exercise, I think take a moment to think about this with your own top performers. It might be somebody that you've managed directly. If you haven't managed people before, maybe it's someone that you've worked with that stands out. What makes you think of that person as a top performer? That number one thing. So we narrowed it down to 5 attributes that were commonly coming through. Now, the 5 attributes you can see here: problem solving, communication, initiative, strategic thinking, and self-direction. So problem solving is that ability not just to solve the problem, but to define the problem. People with this skill are able to identify what is broken, but then also figure out how to fix it. And then lastly, they go on to actually fix the problem. They don't leave it for other people to do. Communication is about speaking and writing clearly, communicating effectively with internal and external stakeholders of business. Self-direction and initiative are the mentality of self-starters. They're the mindsets of people who will initiate new assignments and challenges. They have a good sense of self-direction, and they're not just comfortable simply waiting for tasks to be given to them or projects to be assigned. They're looking for opportunities to help improve the status quo. And then strategic thinking is really creative thinking. It's looking at these people who think outside the box. One of the things that I really like about these attributes too is these attributes apply to every role. We're not looking at a technical skill that is specific to just one or two different roles. These can apply to any role in any company, in any industry, and still deliver value through improving these skills. These people stand out during succession planning as organizations are looking for people to step up and replace managers or leaders. And the question then comes, what makes these combination so transformational? Why do people with these 5 skills demonstrate this ability? Well, if we think about a couple of the characteristics here, initiative and self-direction, these represent an innate bias towards action. They may have been born with this bias, they may have developed this skill through training and development, but they have this bias towards getting things done. At the same time, we see characteristics like problem solving, communication, and strategic thinking. These really reflect our ability to learn how to do things more effectively and more efficiently and more productively. So as employers, as recruiters, as HR professionals, as hiring managers, our opportunity to develop and grow our business is for us to find and develop more candidates, more employees, more people who have this innate bias towards action and getting things done, as well as a track record for doing things effectively. And so as we're evaluating screening procedures for external candidates or identifying internal talent for promotion or career development, these are things that we can be thinking about that try to help separate the talent pool. There are also things we can thinking about: how do we provide training and development and opportunities for employees to develop these skills? The third question then becomes, how do we build teams or build companies that have an overflowing level of top talent or transformational talent? The most successful programs that we see, they're built on a couple of basic ideas, 3 simple ideas. The first one that we need to think about is that top talent have options. And because they have options, we need to inspire them as a business, as somebody that this top talent wants to work for. So we've done a bit of research on when people look for jobs, what motivates them into career change. The research shows that people are looking for jobs generally under 2 scenarios. One is that they're either inspired by a new opportunity. They've seen something from a business or a company and thought, what, that actually looks like somebody I would be interested in working for, or that is a technology that I would be interested in working in, or that is a product I would be interested in working on. Or they're discouraged by the work they're doing or the company that they're working for. and they've decided it's time to have a look at what else is out there. So at the same time as we were doing our research here in Singapore, we commissioned a job seeker study, and which we asked adults over the age of 18, which of the following best describes when you look at career opportunities? And these were the results, so most 50% were looking to keep track of what's on the field. And then 39%, as I said, they were discouraged about their current situation. 35% when they're seeing posts about jobs in companies that interest them. Top talent have a few additional differentiators in there though from the general population of the workforce. Transformational type talent is more attracted to a company by the reputation. 11% more likely to be interested in that company than an average job seeker. The company's mission and vision accounted for an additional 20%. Top talent are really interested in reputation, vision, and mission. And so great companies use this information, their mission, their purpose, and their impact to attract transformational talent. I'm going to use one last example from Apple. And this is a screen grab of the Apple career site. Do your life's best work here with the whole world watching. If you are the kind of person who falls into the category of transformational talent, this is the kind of message that's going to attract you. The company is talking about the value of your work. Apple has a great brand and a reputation. They've generally got a well-known vision. As we dive a little bit deeper into the content on their page, the people here at Apple don't just create products. They create a kind of wonder that's revolutionized entire industries. Join Apple and help us leave the world better than we found it. As we think about both of these messages, the actual career site here and the deeper message, they talk to all of the talent within the business. They're not targeting one specific type of role. It's not just targeting the developers who work on the operating systems. It's not just targeting the hardware designers who design the laptops and the iPods. And it's not targeting just the retail store. These messages will appeal to anyone who is transformational talent within any of these aspects. And it's a great way for them to communicate. The second idea is that top talent will find you and they will come to you if you make it easy. Okay, so when it comes to career decisions, top talent generally want to own their own path. They don't want to be dragged down a path of someone else's choosing. That's really important for us to remember as recruiters. Top talent want to feel in control of the situation. And they do tend to do that through inbound search as part of their recruitment strategy. They're not all just sitting back waiting to be tapped on the shoulder through outbound recruiting methods. In fact, when we looked at top performers, nearly 90% of them searched for jobs at least several times in the last year. And, over half of them were looking at new jobs at least monthly. These are very active job seekers. This is a bit of a contradiction to what we might normally hear coming out of HR, that top performers will generally just get tapped on the shoulder to come and work. They will apply for jobs. They do expect that application process to be easy, which is what we're going to touch on in a moment. And the reason I say that they expect this to be easy is, companies are unfortunately ruling out through complicated processes, the ability for top talent or transformational talent to come in and join their organization. Now, I'm focusing on the recruitment aspect here, but for anyone who's dealing with internal candidates and career development, all of these same ideas will translate to your internal processes. So this last idea is about making it easy to get through the door. You know, we want as little as friction as possible in our recruitment process to get the best talent. I don't know how many of you have heard of Jim Collins. He's the author of the book Good to Great. And, you know, he says a company should limit its growth based on its ability to attract enough of the right people. You know, recruiting headcount and hiring just for the sake of hiring often brings the wrong people into our organization, and that can have some terrible ramifications. Now, the interesting thing as we think about this too is, you know, transformational talent for one organization, you know, there are aspects of that equation around the focus on mission and the vision. You know, what a company that might appeal to one person may not be the same company that's going to appeal to another person. So it's important as we're thinking about this to think about how we can position. You know, how does our business attract the right talent who want to work for our company so that we can grow? Now it comes down to this end-to-end experience. You know, we have to inspire them to want to stay and work with us. We have to make it easy for them to show interest. And this is around, how are these people looking for jobs? Are they using a mobile? Are they using a laptop? Are they using a desktop? How complicated is our application process? Are we asking questions that are relevant or not? Are our recruiters responding to everybody? Are we using automation where we need to respond to candidates quickly? You know, what's our actual experience like that the candidate is going to go through? How do we build a strong connection with them that's going to commit them to joining our organization? You know, one of the great examples here that you see in a lot of countries around the world is graduate programs where, you know, you hire graduates a long time before they actually come and join the organization. What are we doing with our candidate experience and building a connection in that time? People who are considering multiple offers, how are we wowing those people and building that connection with them? Then we need to show them, you know, what's special about our company and, you know, make the right offer for the right candidate. You know, different people are motivated by different things. Now, with all this in mind, you know, every recruitment process, every business has transformational talent. Now, some of us have more transformational talent than others within our pipelines. You know, it could be the brand or the reputation that is giving us an unfair advantage off the bat. It could be, and you know, proportionally that other companies have less transformational in their pipeline, in their talent. You know, their brand may not be well known. They may be a new business. They may be a startup. You know, the same rules still apply though. And what we see time after time, the biggest issue is companies accidentally eliminating top talent early in that process. This is the funnel that we see in a lot of organizations. You know, when we put unnecessary barriers in the way, we're not just losing transformational talent, but we're losing a proportion of the entire application funnel. This gives us a smaller pipeline of great talent than we should rightfully have. You know, one of the things that I often ask when I'm out talking to clients is, when was the last time you actually went through your own recruitment process? You know, whether you're a hiring manager, whether you're a recruiter, you know, whether you're supporting students to help get jobs even. It's interesting to kind of see the experiences that they're going through. Now, the answer that I usually get to this question is, I haven't done it since I joined the company. Or if they're a referral, you know, they may never have gone through the process. And what we find a lot is that as companies evolve, whether it's compliance measures or a need for new questions, you know, additional components get added to the application process, but nobody ever does a full review and actually sits down and goes, is this actually still needed? Is this still relevant? And you know, that is actually a really important step in this making it easy to show interest. We did this research, we've done this research a few times now. If we look at Fortune 500 companies in the US, these are big companies, their average time to apply was 13 minutes. That's actually quite a long time for an application process. And the longer it takes to complete an application, the more candidates or the more applications we're going to lose. 30% of candidates won't spend more than 15 minutes filling in a job application. 57% of candidates who are earning over 100,000 US, so that's about 140,000 Singaporean, won't spend more than 15 minutes on their job application. And this is high skilled labor in a lot of cases that we're losing out on. Some of these times were way too long. The longest process it took us to get through was 52 minutes. I do not imagine too many candidates sitting down and filling in an application for nearly an hour. The shortest application processes, they were down at around a minute. And these are some big and well-known companies that are able to do applications in a very short time frame. Netflix down in 1 minute. Apple, 5 minutes. Coca-Cola and Facebook, 8 minutes. These are companies that are still going to be having a lot of candidates in their application process, but they're looking at ensuring that they don't lose that top talent in the need to find efficiency in the process of dealing with those numbers. The other aspect of this, I mentioned the difference a moment ago between desktop and mobile. If top candidates can't apply to the jobs easily, they won't. They'll move on and look at the next thing. And this is, I think, pretty self-explanatory. Complex application processes will lose us applications. We still see businesses that don't allow candidates to apply from a mobile phone. But we do see most job seeker behavior taking place on a mobile device these days. At Indeed, we have an option for all of our companies that we work with to do their application process in the same 4 steps that Netflix use. What is the candidate's name? What is the email? What is the phone number? What is their resume? That is all that we that is the minimum, or that's all the information that someone using the Indeed apply button needs to supply an employer. That is all Netflix asks for, regardless of which candidate, which role you're applying for within the organization. Everything else can be asked at a point after that through the process. So where do we go from here, with this information? I think, Sheryl Sandberg said it really well. No team has ever had too many strong performers. Most of us can point to a rock star that we've either recruited ourselves or that we've worked with or that we've taught. That shouldn't be enough though. We should always be striving to develop or recruit more high quality transformational talent. And at the end of the day, increasing automation, ongoing skill shortages, advances in productivity made possible through new technology, these are all pointing to a future at the moment where fewer people will be having an even bigger impact on our organizations. And so this is what I want to leave you with today, is just that quick wrap up of how do we bring these people in. As I said, we've got to inspire talent to join the organization. Think about your job descriptions. Think about how you position your company. Think about the reviews that people are leaving about you online. It's not just services that we go out, when we go out to a restaurant or we buy something on Amazon. Those are not the only reviews that exist anymore. There are hundreds of thousands and millions of people around the world who are leaving reviews on the companies that they work for. How are you responding to those reviews? How you respond to different situations going on around the world can certainly be used, or will certainly inspire top talent to see you as an employer of choice that they're interested in working for. You know, making it really easy for top talent to find your jobs. You know, one of my favorite tips is, you know, at Indeed, we index jobs from right around the world. So it doesn't matter whether you're working on roles here in Singapore, working on roles across the rest of Southeast Asia, or working on roles anywhere else around the world. One of the easiest things you can do is jump onto Indeed, search for the roles that you're recruiting, and see how easy they are to find. You know, and if you can't find the job that you're trying to fill as easy as you think you should be able to, you know, feel free to reach out and have a chat at any time, because, you know, that is something that we are regularly helping organizations with, is how to be found by top talent. Keeping the application process simple, you know, is certainly great. We can apply that methodology to our performance review processes as well. You know, the screening methods that you use, they get you to a certain point. But, you know, when we're asking, you know, 30 or 40 questions up front in an effort to help weed out the talent, you know, think about the impact that that's having on your actual candidates. You know, is asking 30 to 40 questions up front really helping your recruitment process, or are you actually weeding out your top candidates who won't take the time to go through that? And as a result, your additional questions are giving you effectively the best of the rest. Okay, so reducing the number of questions we ask to just those that actually allow us to make a decision or that are legally required can have a big impact on the candidate pool coming through. But optimizing those processes is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, it's certainly an important part. How our recruiters, how our hiring managers, how our HR professionals participate in the process is critical to that as well. You know, responding to candidates quickly, ushering them through the hiring process, giving them a heads up on, you know, expectations around timeframes, what's going to be happening in different interviews. These will all produce great results for your organization. You know, as I said with the process, the same thing applies internally, ensuring that people understand their expectations. Look for the 5 characteristics that we talked about identifying top talent. You know, think about how do we embed this into our screening efforts, our interview processes, our performance reviews, our development pathways. You know, so we're thinking about, you know, the communication, the initiative, the self-direction, the problem solving, and the strategic thinking. You know, these are all attributes that we can design processes to look for. And the last one is really, you know, this make offers that matter. You know, money matters to a lot of people. Certainly salary is important. But, you know, there's a lot of people where meaningful things matter more than compensation. You know, it could be work-life balance. It could be other aspects of the company, the business, or other benefits or perks that you're able to offer. So think about how you actually position those with your employers. If we go through and we apply these changes and we think about how we can embed this into our business, you know, it has the power to significantly transform our business and our organization. I'm a huge Disney fan, as anyone who knows me will tell you, so I'm going to wrap it up now with a great quote from Walt Disney. You know, you can dream it, create, design, and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it requires people to make a dream the reality. And that's where the transformational talent comes in. So with that, I want to thank you for your time in listening through the webinar, and hand it back over to Matthew very quickly.
Thank you, Mark, for your insightful sharing on transformational talent. All right, as shared by Mark just now about the 5 leading attributes of transformation talent. Here at SSG, we actually has identified 18 generic skills and competency, also known as GSC. In this, all these GSCs applies to all our 34 skills framework, and out of these 18, there are actually 6 of them align to what Mark has mentioned about the attributes. Okay, first, communications, problem solving, and of course, a combination of the other generic skills like overall mindset, creative thinking as mentioned by Mark, sense making and transdisciplinary thinking that actually can contribute to the strategic thinking that Mark mentioned about the 5 leading attributes of the transformation talents. All right. All right, so now we go down to the Q&A session, and we would like to address some of the questions that you all have posted. First, we will go to the answer one, which posed by Edwin Tan. He actually mentioned what is the difference between initiative and self-direction. Katie has already replied that she is of the idea that initiative is more proactive and self-direction is more reactive. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I think initiative is certainly, as Katie said, proactive. It's looking for what needs to be getting done, getting up, taking that initiative on that approach, and looking for the solution. Self-direction really is an extension of that allows us to work through that process. Obviously, being able to, similar to problem solving, being able to go through and implement and execute on that initiative.
All right. Then we move to the next question by Yao Hua. So he mentioned about how did the survey for Idea 2 identify who should be the top performers to participate in the survey conducted by Indeed.
Sorry, you just broke up there a bit. Could you just repeat that one?
Okay, by Yao Hua, in Idea 2, there was mention about the survey being conducted and how did the survey identify who should be the top talent that participate in your survey?
So the top performers in the survey were identified as people who were typically identified as top performers through review cycles within their organizations.
So they have already been identified even before they can participate in the survey. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it was self-identified by the job seekers in the survey that asks them through, that guides them through that process. They don't know that's what they're being identified as, but that's used to map them in on the back end. Right. I can share a detailed description on that after if we have a
sure.
methodology.
All right. So we'll move on to a couple of questions on transformation talents at team members. So there's a question by Yo Suan. So she asked about are the top performers team players, as they might not be able to work well with both performers.
So I would say top performers are team players. If we think about the attributes, communication is one of those attributes. And an aspect of being a great communicator is being a great team player. They understand how to communicate, they understand how to get the best out of their other team members, and if they're a manager, those that report into them. If they're not a team player, if they're disruptive, that's not really demonstrating the attribute.
So I hope that they answer that question. Also, on the similar line itself, Alex also asked a similar question about are they disruptive? So Katie actually replied that the new people that they bring to the team a very different experience than when they join them. Regardless of this talent, this can be disruptive at times. So disruptions from those talents, transformation talents can actually influence a new way of thinking or a new way of processing information that can create efficiencies or growth and also development for the businesses, which can be also a very positive results. Thank you, Katie.
And I think it's important to kind of look at that. So disruptive in terms of bringing disruption to the business, bringing disruptive ideas that progress the business forward. Absolutely, transformational talent. Through transformational talent will not be troublemakers from just being disruptive to colleagues.
Okay, so Jun Fong actually asked, are there drawbacks having transformation talent?
I am yet to see any. Any business that is looking to grow and evolve is going to be looking for the talent that helps them get there. I'm yet to see through any company that we've worked with, through any of the research that we've done, any downside to the idea of bringing in transformational talent to the organization.
Okay, now we move on to Edwin Tan. He also asked, how do we assess individuals that have the 5 qualities of the transformation talents, and what are an efficient way or effective way of doing
that? So I think the assessment is, there's obviously a lot of different ways you could assess that, and how we assess people is different for every role. I would probably leave that to the HR team within your own organization to work with how that best integrates with the processes that you already have in play. Certainly assessments that will support that. There are role play activities that could be done. You could certainly be looking at certificates of completion from courses that have been done and successfully passed, and certainly those that have reputation aligned to them. But what is, in terms of what's most efficient and effective for your own organization, that's something that really has to be considered in terms of the processes that you're putting into play.
Okay, so I could actually ask whether can you share the results, the research results?
How Indeed puts them into play.
How Indeed has embraced them.
I think, Katie, would you like to answer this one, having just gone through the recruitment process as a hiring manager yourself?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I think Indeed embraces the research really well, actually. We are always taking additional considerations into play when hiring for our roles. We think about not just fulfilling the basic needs of the role itself, and making sure that we tick all the boxes identified in the job description, but trying to uncover additional attributes of those top performers who could contribute beyond what we're aware of as a need at that point in time. We also actually take a lot of the research that contributes to our understanding of how employer branding actually plays a big part in attracting top talent. So we do our best to encourage everyone across Indeed, over 10,000 employees globally, to contribute to that employer branding piece, whether that be via social or word of mouth or direct one-on-one, and talk about the opportunities that we have and the challenges that we face quite openly, so that where we have an opportunity to attract people who could help us solve those challenges, we're in a good position to do so.
Thank you, Katie. Now we move on to Jin Feng's question. You mentioned about Dr. Howard Gardner recognized that there are multiple intelligence and that each individuals are talented in their own aspects. If we to recognize this to be true, shouldn't be companies be focusing on recognizing all talents and using these talents rather than focusing on just transformation talent? This is akin to saying everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid.
Yeah, look, there's a couple of aspects on this one. One is we certainly need a diverse set of skill sets within any organization. We need a diverse set of ideas. You know, whilst we might say problem solving, you know, different backgrounds, different education, different experiences is going to lead different people through different paths of problem solving. You know, that's what we want. We don't want every single person who is a transformational talent to be a clone of every other person in the organization who's transformational talent. So we do certainly, whilst we want to look at the attributes that these people have, that innate bias towards action and getting things done, you know, those abilities to solve problems, think about the business strategic direction, and communicate effectively, everyone is going to do that differently using different talents and skills that they have built through their career and their education. So I don't think that they need to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah, okay. We also don't believe that. So we believe that everybody contributes, as well as just that the transformational talent itself actually has certain lead in certain ways in the attributes that they have. Okay, and thank you, Mark. And we have come to the end of this webinar session on how to identify and attract transformation talent. We're also very grateful to have you, Mark, to join us from Indeed this morning, you and Kathy, to actually share with us your insights and answer some of the questions. And to all the webinars attendees, I hope that you have good takeaways from this session, and we would like to encourage you to actually join us in our future webinars every month, as we will be pushing out one webinar session each month on different topics. If you are interested, you can share with us your thought on the kind of future topics you actually want us to share. So moving on, okay, before you move off, actually we would like to invite you to actually take a post-webinar survey on this screen. It just takes about 2 minutes of our time, and your feedback is important to us, and you'll be remain confidential as you help us to improve our future webinars and of course to serve you better. Because if you're interested to find out the kind of initiative that we have at SkillsFuture, so you can look at the following links for initiative for enterprise as well as for individuals. And also just to reiterate that today's webinar session will be hosted in My SkillsFuture portal, our LinkedIn, and also our YouTube. So if you have so do not be hesitate to share with us, and we look forward to see you next time. Thank you very much.